ng kuryente namin ay nawawala, pati po tubig. So I decided to record this webinar just in case mawalan kami ng kuryente. So JP will be sharing with you an hour-long webinar on how to develop effective research proposal. So JP, please share the video.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna hit play.
Magandang araw po sa inyo lahat. Muli, I am Jeffrey Bunquin and I am the founder of Filipino Science Hub. So welcome to FilSciHub Research University's training course number 4. So we hope that this training course becomes your practical guide on how to develop an effective research proposal. So for today, I will be covering the essential elements of a research proposal, and I will also be infusing some tips and best practices on how you can strengthen your research proposal to win the favor of funding agencies and essentially win funding grant competitions. It is our pleasure to introduce our students to the process of research project development and more particularly research proposal writing. And we hope that this training course will also serve as a refresher material for our teachers and students who may have already had some prior experiences in writing up research proposals. Okay, so before we proceed with the discussion, I would like to give you an idea of my background. So, ako po ay Filipino from Batangas City, and I was born and raised in the Philippines. I was educated in the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, where I took a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry. And in 2009, I moved to Canada to take up my doctorate degree in chemistry. After graduating from my PhD program, I moved on to the States to venture into a research and development career over the industry and the government laboratory sectors. And so, I have had a total of about 14 years worth of experience when it comes to research and development. And over those 14 years, I have also been fortunate enough to get involved in a number of research proposal development. And so what I'm actually doing for today is that I am not just giving you a regurgitation of textbook approaches to research proposal writing, but what I actually did was during the preparation of this training course, I went back and revisited like all those research proposals that I have written back in the days. I have dissected them down to their common framework, and it's actually that common design of research proposals that I will be sharing with you. So ito po ay practical guide based on my experiences. And as I have mentioned, I have worked for a number of different organizations that are venturing into research. And these essential elements are the exact same elements that make up research proposals that you're writing for an academic research project, for a government lab research project, and also for an industrial company's research and development proposal initiatives. So these are the questions that prompted us to put together this training course. So nung una po, whenever we go back home to the Philippines and we do outreach activities, essentially interacting with high school teachers and asking them what training materials they need to be able to initiate a research project more effectively, we're usually asked the question of how do we write a research proposal? And those questions are typically followed up by specific questions like, what are the parts of a research proposal? So, yan po, marami pong medyo nalilito po sa atin. Ano ba yung mga essential part? Kasi depending on which particular funding agency you're applying for support, they do have their own preferences in terms of the format of or the composition of a research proposal. So I'm hoping that after this training course, you will have an idea of the most essential components of a research proposal that you need to write for whatever funding agency you're submitting it to. And then the second specific question that we typically get is in addition to identifying the different parts of a research proposal, what type of information or like what level of granularity or detail should you actually provide whenever you're writing a research proposal? So, gaano po yung bakalalim yung pagkakasulat ng research proposal? And when do you know that the level of detail is enough already to convince the funding agency? And so I'm hoping that in this course, we can give you an idea as to how much effort to exert in terms of your research of information to put into a research proposal. And then again, at the same time, how to frame the language in such a way that you are really convincing that funding institution that you are the right person to work on this idea and that your idea is the best there is that deserves their resources. Okay, so to answer these questions, for this training course, there are three key takeaways that I would like for you to bring with you after this webinar. So the first of which is we hope that you'd be um, more familiar with the different parts of a research proposal, each part's purpose, and the essential information that you should include in those specific components. Secondly, we'll provide tips and best practices in terms of like how you can make your research proposal as convincing as possible. And then for the benefit of our teachers and students, I will also be introducing to you the concepts of research, project planning, and management. And to make this experience more relatable, we will be providing like specific examples framed around the concept of developing a research project that involves the synthesis of gold nanoparticles for a specific application. And for the benefit of those who have actually not attended our previous seminar, this is the exact same case study that I use for our training course on the design of experiments. So gagawin po namin, thematic po ito. So lahat na po ng mga training courses namin, we will try to make use of one specific example just to make sure that you can visualize how a concept can be developed from ideation all the way up to data processing and science communication. But allow me to qualify po that this specific case study that we are providing here just for the purpose of exemplification, this is a hypothetical case study po. So don't take this example as though I'm giving you a specific topic to work on because ito po ay for demonstration purposes lamang. Okay, so before we begin discussing the parts of our research proposal, the very first question that we have to be able to answer and be very familiar with would be the definition of a research proposal. So a research proposal is a request for support for sponsored research, instruction, or extension project. So this is a request. So again, a request has to be quite convincing. And what does this research, what does this request typically consist of? A research proposal should provide a background of the proposed work. So, what information convinced you to work on this area? What's the conventional wisdom within the proposed area of study? A research proposal also puts into detail the proposed idea. So, from a very broad research topic, what specific scope are you trying to cover? So dito na po papasok, what are the specific research questions that you're trying to answer, and then the scope of the work, which is very important. A well-written research proposal should have a fairly well-defined scope. So yan po, we will discuss that in greater detail later on. A research proposal should also provide a work plan. So in order for you to work or to answer those research questions, you have to put into detail how will you get there? What specific activities do you need to do? What type of experiments do you need to carry out to get to the answers? And when I said answers, a research proposal also provides a list of anticipated milestones. So ano po ba yung mga resulta? Ano po ba yung mga sagot sa tanong na ina-anticipate na makuha ninyo? And how will that help establish the concept or the ideas that you're trying to develop, from your research activities? And most importantly, a research proposal provides a list of impacts. So what's the importance of working on your proposed research idea? Who will benefit from it? What will be the effects of it, like to the society, to the area of study? So these are some of the questions and information that you have to be able to put into a proposal. Okay. So how would these information fit within a written proposal? So ano na ba yung mga most common elements of a research proposal? And these are the first five concepts that I will be discussing in greater detail in the succeeding slide. So the first of which, a proposal should have a title and a list of proponents. A proposal should have a summary or an abstract. There's the body of the proposal, which is composed of a bunch of different subsections, and later po natin yan i-discuss. The proposal should have a section dedicated for the anticipated value of the research. So, bakit ba mahalaga yung research program or project that you are trying to propose or to solicit support for? And then lastly, very importantly, we need to provide a set of references. So saan ba natin nakuha yung information that we included in the proposal? That is very important too. And then after we've discussed like all the most essential elements of a research proposal, as I have mentioned before, I will be introducing to you the topics of um, uh, expertise and research management relating to a research program. How you can more effectively communicate, how a research program can contribute to the training and development of everyone involved, so like students and collaborators. And then lastly, I will also briefly touch on the importance of uh, covering intellectual property in as early as the proposal development stage. Okay, so the first part of a research proposal is the proposal title. So, or you should be able to compose a proposal title effectively, because this is the very first component of the research proposal that the research funding agencies or the reviewers will read. So kapag medyo mababa po yung quality ng inyong title, they might just lose interest to, read further into your proposal, or they might end up becoming, or they might end up becoming negatively biased towards the idea because medyo laglag na yung simula. And so, what are the qualities of an effective proposal title? So, it should very well represent the proposed idea. It should be catchy and it should be concise. So, kailangan hindi po to kayo hihingalin sa pagbabasa ng title kasi sobrang haba niya. So this is an example of a concise and catchy title that you can use for a research proposal. So yung idea po natin is that we are developing size-controlled and size-uniform nanoparticles in a cost-efficient manner in order to produce materials that can be used as anti-cancer agents. So how can you write up what would make for a catchy or interesting proposal title? So this is something that I can provide as an example. Say cost-effective synthesis of size-uniform gold nanoparticles for anti-cancer applications. So kung hihimay-himayin nyo, if you're gonna look at the anatomy of this title, so you have the catchphrases cost effective. So that's attention catching because that means that you're trying to improve the cost of this material. You have the catchphrase size uniform gold particle. So size uniformity, it is a very important property of gold nanoparticles. So instead of having random sizes, you're trying to find ways to just make one particular size of a material. And then lastly, for anti-cancer applications, so you have the proposed ideas, the proposed quality of the materials in terms of cost and size, and then the purpose for which you're making them. So you're making them to make anti-cancer drugs. So yun po. So with just how many words are there here, about 10 or less, you will have already captured the main concept, or like the topic that you are proposing for this project. And then, so along with the proposal title, typically we list down the names of the proponents. So who are the authors, or who came up with the idea? And it is very important that um, we list them down. Make it a practice that we identify everyone who contributed to the idea and to the proposal development, because that helps in building camaraderie and rapport within the group, and that also builds a sense of community. So isama yung teachers, students, collaborators, so whoever contributed ideas, ilagay niyo po dyan. And then along with the name of the authors, especially if you're working collaboratively with people from different institutions, you also list down like their affiliation. So anong school sila, anong company sila, anong research institutions they're part with. So it is very important that you give credit to everyone who contributed to the idea. Okay, so the second part of a research proposal is what we call the summary or the abstract. So an abstract or a summary gives you an overview of the research proposal. And based on my experience of writing research proposal, like typically there are three main concepts that you're trying to establish, or that you're trying to provide in an abstract. So the first of which is a background. So uh, what problem needs to be solved? Like what is the broad area that covers your area of study? And then also like on this in this part, you also talk about what has been done before. So it's very important that you do your literature search quite effectively for you to be able to provide the background. The second part of this is typically the problem. It's the problem statement. So what specific research questions are you proposing to answer? Because we begin the overview with a fairly broad concept, but you also have to be able to naturally transition into the specific questions. Ano po ba yung gusto nyo talagang i-establish? Kasi you cannot claim something over a very broad um, topic. And then the last part of this is the proposed study. So you have to concisely uh, express your objectives for the program, and also you should also concisely speak about the scope of the project. And typically per section po we dedicate 2 to 3 sentences. So effectively for an abstract, you should actually not go beyond 10 sentences. And just to give you an idea, why do we actually want for this to be concise and less than 10 sentences? It's actually mainly because the abstract is you will initially communicate to um, your funding agencies, or to any reviewer who would ask you questions. So for example, hypothetically speaking, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of an elevator pitch. Say pumasok kayo ng building and you enter an elevator and you chanced upon one of your funding agencies, and they ask you, okay, what are you really proposing to do? So an elevator pitch should be an overview of your idea. It should capture the essence of your idea, and you should be able to communicate that within 30 to 60 seconds, because yung elevator rides po typically they last for 30 to 60 seconds, like on average. And so by limiting your sentences to about like less than 10, you can quite efficiently communicate the essence of your idea um, in less than a minute. So it's going to be much easier to digest, like some of these tips if we have examples. And so again, this is a specific example framed around the gold nanoparticle synthesis idea that we introduced earlier during the study, that we're trying to make um, cheap and size uniform gold nanoparticles for anti-cancer treatment. And so again, these are just examples. Wag po ninyo itong i-digest as these are things that we are proposing that you do. This is just for the purposes of exemplification. So in terms of the background, you can write up a couple of sentences that speaks about why cancer, like that, like the importance of cancer research, and that it's a leading cause of deaths globally, and then follow that statement with the importance of developing anti-cancer drugs. So that provides a background, like what area are you trying to work on, and then you transition into the statements that will help you um, communicate your hypothesis. So the first of which would be metal nanoparticles have actually been studied as anti-cancer agents. However, they're quite expensive. So, you have already established, like a hypothesis and a challenge, and then follow that up with a statement like that says something to the effect of studies suggests that size uniform nanoparticles are more effective anti-cancer agents. So with those two sentences, you will have already communicated your problem statement. What specific questions you're trying to answer. And then the third part of it is again the proposed study or general objective. So like again in this section you talk about the main objective of the project. So you say a research project on the development of cheap and size uniform gold nanoparticles is proposed. And um, the impact of it. You should also communicate the impact of it. So this program can make high efficacy anti-cancer drugs more accessible. So, with just 6 sentences, you have communicated the background, the problem statement, the objective, and also the relevance or the impact of the study. Okay, so after the overview, the third part of the proposal is its body. So the body of the proposal is composed of at least like 3 different sections. So the first of which would be the rationale and background to the proposed idea. The second part is what we call the justification, which essentially covers the hypothesis that you have formulated and the basis for that hypothesis. And then the third part, which is also which I consider to be like one of the most important parts of the proposal, is the proposed research work. So within this section, you're gonna have to define some general considerations for the proposed work, scope and limitation. What you're intending to do, say over a span of a year or two of working on this project. And then the third part would be research methods. You have a vision. What would be the path? How will you actually get there? Okay, so the first part of the body of a proposal is the rationale or the background for the proposed projects. And in most proposals that I have written and that I have read and reviewed myself, typically um, experts dedicate like a page for this, so you can have like about at least 3 paragraphs. And so typically the first paragraph, or they begin the rationale and the background for the study by speaking more broadly about like the proposed idea, because like in the overview earlier, you only had like 2 sentences for this. So you can dedicate a paragraph that answers the questions, what the proposed research is about. um, are there literature or prior reports or studies that um, can help define your problem, or describe the problem. And then you typically end this paragraph with with answers to the question, why are you proposing this idea and what is its relevance? Are you doing something to benefit the world? You have to be able to speak to those importance, in this section. So this is going to be your platform. You're establishing the need for your project. You're not just doing this because you're curious. You're doing, or you're proposing a certain research idea because there is a need. It is of high importance. Okay, so the second part of the rationale or the background is the literature uh, information. So dito na po papasok yung review of literature, and our second training course for FilSciHub Research University very well focuses on how to effectively review the literature. So I suggest that you actually check that out. That was delivered by Janice Avarilla, who's a scientist based in Kansas, here in the US. So what type of information should you, so what are the types of information that you should take from the literature and include as part of the rationale? So based on experience, typically people provide insights into the progress within the area of research. So what has been done quite recently that's considered state of the art, and by yung best results recently, can help justify your interest in the area of study. And then in certain cases, like it's fairly easy to find recent developments that you can use as motivation for an idea. But if you end up working or proposing an idea that has never been explored before, this is also the section where you highlight the novelty of what you're doing. So you just say, okay, this has never been done before, but um, by conjecture and by comparing this idea with what's been established in other fairly related but non-overlapping studies, this is how we are framing the hypothesis. So, you can really use the review of literature to highlight the importance based on related studies, or you can also cite literature to highlight the novelty, why what you're doing is really new and it's never been explored or done before. So again, this will very well reflect the quality of your review of literature. Okay. And then the last part of the rationale or the background is the hypothesis or the objective. So this is the part where you talk about your hypothesis. So essentially, your hypothesis is going to be the basis of your research objectives. And so if you notice, I have actually organized these elements to the rationale and background using an inverted triangle. So this is to show that the thought process that is practiced into writing up a rationale is via deductive reasoning. So you start with a very broad uh, question, and then you are refining, or you're actually coming up with a more focused set of research questions all the way down to the hypothesis using your research of the literature. So ito po yung tinatawag typically ng mga tao sa atin na conceptual framework. So saan ba nanggaling yung inyong hypothesis? Saan ba nanggaling yung inyong research question? So this is actually the part. So the rationale and the background provides that explanation, of your interest to a particular topic, and what specific questions and hypotheses you're trying to verify. Again, an example based on the nanoparticle idea. So again, you begin with restating the proposed work. So you say, the synthesis of cheap and size uniform gold nanoparticles is proposed, and ultimately, the goal of it is to address challenges in the development of economic and efficient anti-cancer drugs. So that's one sentence you can further expound on. So like we said, typically we dedicate a paragraph for the first part of the rationale, and then secondly, the second part is related literature. So you start citing statements or findings from different studies that says, oh, several studies indicate that size uniform transition metals are more effective anti-cancer drugs. So uh, that's findings from other research that helps you justify your interest in size uniform gold nanoparticles. And then you can also include say pieces of literature that justifies why you think you can make those nanoparticles cheap. So you can say recent advances in nanoparticle synthesis methodology suggest that cheaper precursors and milder conditions can be employed, and this is very critical for reducing the cost. So like again, you on purpose you are citing studies or statements and reports that help uh, communicate your research questions. And then lastly, your hypothesis, you have to state it here. So size uniform gold nanoparticles can be more effective anti-cancer drugs. And then the second statement could be, oh, the use of cheap organic templates and milder conditions can significantly reduce the cost of gold nanoparticles. And then these hypotheses are again the basis of your research objectives, what you really are intending to do, what you intend to work on in the laboratory, what you intend to acquire data as proofs for. So, yun po. So these are just examples. Again, 3 paragraphs is typically enough for the rationale. Obviously, I have only shown like a couple of sentences just to give you an idea of the types of information or the types of messages that we have to send across whenever we're writing up a rationale or a background for the proposed research project. Okay, so the second part of the body of a proposal is the justification of your hypothesis and or research objective. So typically we dedicate one justification section for every hypothesis or objective that you have formulated for, like, within the proposal. So again, one section per hypothesis and per objective. Typically, yung typical na length that I have seen for this section, it ranges from 4 to 6 paragraphs, and there are three main components. The first of which is a restatement of a more elaborate restatement of the hypothesis and the research objective, and that is typically followed by um, a citation of relevant literature information. So, like I said, when it comes to framing these ideas and specific objectives and hypotheses, the way you write up the justification is really an indication of how of the quality of your review of literature. That's the reason why this is very important, that you do your background research quite effectively, justify your objective, and communicate the need, like why what you're doing is important. Okay, so the typical pieces of related literature that we typically provide here would be, a restatement of conventional wisdom in the area, and then you follow it up, by highlighting the gaps in the field of study. So the challenges, or what are the unanswered questions that you're trying to answer with your proposed research idea. So it's very important that you do that. And then lastly, you actually state, the studies, or the studies or pieces of information from the literature that served as the basis for your hypothesis. So this is the context. Saan ba nanggaling yung research question nyo? What triggered for you to be interested to answer those questions? And then typically, we end a justification section with the importance of the proposed study. So again, this is more elaborate po, because the importance of answering that hypothesis, the importance of achieving the goals of achieving like this specific objective. Is this relevant to a particular area? Who will be benefiting from it? Would that be cancer-stricken individuals? Would it be specific to certain areas that need access to cheaper medicine? So you have to exemplify, or you actually have to be able to enumerate um, um, these importance, or like the impacts of answering or validating like this specific hypothesis. So again, and there's a range of different importance that you can highlight. You can even include that, by doing this, you will be able to establish a much better understanding as to how nanoparticles are working. So you're also contributing to the fundamental understanding of the science behind, say, nanomaterials as cancer treatment. So that's very important. So again, medyo kung mapapansin po ninyo, medyo mahirap kasi ito talagang i-digest. Again, pupunta po tayo sa specific example. So like I said, you write up a justification specific to an objective. So there are two main objectives earlier that I identified. The first of which is on the development of size uniform gold nanoparticles as potential high efficacy anti-cancer drug treatment. So the focus of this objective or hypothesis is, to prove that size uniform gold nanoparticles will work as anti-cancer treatment drugs. So upon restating that, you further reinforce the importance of answering this question by citing conventional knowledge. Ano na bang na-establish when it comes to nanoparticles as anti-cancer drugs? And then you mentioned studies, and information available from the open literature. Are there findings for that suggest that a relationship between nanoparticle size and anti-cancer activity is important for cancer treatment? So like you are trying to again provide them with pieces of information that motivated you to propose that, okay, size uniformity is a very important aspect of nanomaterial drug development. And then you have to highlight, and what are the challenges around the synthesis of size uniform nanoparticles. So by highlighting the challenges, it's going to become clearer to the reviewers or to the funding agency that, oh, yung pinopropose niya is addressing a very important challenge when it comes to the synthesis of size uniform nanoparticles. And if they can develop size uniform particles, then we might be able to come up with an anti-cancer drug. And again, that is already transitioning into the importance of the proposed study. Again, correlation, size uniformity, higher efficacy. Um, so ito po yung, this is how you write up a justification. Like quite unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult for me to write up po, an entire page with with 4 to 6 paragraphs to show you guys as examples. But this is the framework. This is the framework of a justification section for a specific hypothesis or program objective. And then again, yung second example po, yung second objective ng gold nanoparticle case study natin is, in addition to making size uniform nanoparticles, we have to be able to produce them at a cost-effective manner. So when I say cost-effective, we have to make these materials cheap. So again, we start the justification by elaborating on the hypothesis or the objective. So we say the proposed study will adapt new synthetic methods and chemical precursors to produce cheap and uniform nanoparticles. And you follow it up by stating what's the conventional wisdom when it comes to the synthesis of nanoparticles. Is it usually expensive? How many studies are there, or how many protocols are there that produce nanoparticles quite cheaply? So you have to be able to provide those information. And then you should also mention or cite studies that suggest that cheaper synthetic routes can be adapted. So it could be a cheap synthetic route for making, say, um, silver nanoparticles. And if you're quite sure that you can adapt the silver chemistry for making gold nanoparticles, you should cite those. Again, highlight the challenges. What makes it difficult to make size-controlled gold nanoparticles? So by highlighting those challenges, you're establishing the fact that ito yung problema. This is a problem that needs to be solved. And we think that by copying the method that was adapted for silver, you're coming up with a solution. And then again, once you have verified your hypothesis, then it's very easy then to justify the importance. So again, the importance of cheap anti-cancer drugs is that you can make it more accessible to everyone. They don't have to raise a huge sum of money to avail of treatments. If you design the framework of your justification in this manner, you can tell the story in a fairly cohesive manner. So yun po. So justification is more like you're just telling them the story of how you came up with the idea and what made you confident that this is a good idea. So whenever you're writing a justification for a proposed or research idea or hypothesis, what could set your proposal apart would be if you could highlight some proof of concept work that proves in part that this idea is actually working, that this um, hypothesis is actually more likely verifiable. So if you're a high school teacher and over the years you, say for example, have been having your students to study the water quality within a specific area, you can use the results from previous years as a justification to any follow-up study for that topic. So yun po, kapag meron kayong preliminary data that supports your idea, you should highlight that in the justification section, because in addition to the review of literature, if you can provide them with actual experimental data that you gathered yourself, that typically helps increase the confidence in what you are proposing, because you're not only highlighting the studies or findings of other people, you have generated data to a certain extent to prove the point that you are proposing a very good idea that is worth funding and supporting. So, okay, so moving on. So the third part of the body of the proposal is the proposed research work. So this puts into detail, the first of which would be the general considerations of the proposed study. So when you say general considerations, what are the most critical elements or factors that you're trying to study to verify your hypothesis. The second part of this would be the scope and limitation. So it is very important whenever you're proposing a research program that you define the activities that you will be doing and the questions that you are trying to answer with your experiments, and at the same time also um, define aspects of the study that you will not be able to cover. And the third part of the proposed research work would be the research methods. So, for example, if you're proposing that you're gonna prove a scientific phenomenon, then what are the experiments that you need to do to prove that? What types of activities do you need to carry out to be able to establish an answer? These are the things that you have to be able to uh, put into the proposed research work. And this is typically the longest part of the proposal, and I won't be able to give you, say, a 10-page example of proposed research work, but I would just like to go over what we can consider to be the conceptual framework. Okay, so for the case study that we've been working on, so what would be your general considerations? So general considerations, as I've mentioned earlier, would be the most critical elements of the study. So, like what specific factors do you need to be able to understand to be able to put together a meaningful body of knowledge? So the first of which was nanoparticle size. So as I mentioned before in the examples, the hypothesis is that size controlled or size uniform nanoparticles would make for higher efficacy anti-cancer drugs. The second objective would be that there are strategies that can be adapted for the synthesis of nanoparticles to make them cheap and affordable for people. So and then the third critical general consideration here would be the anti-cancer property. So, and this is most relevant to the first objective, which is size uniformity. Is size uniformity really a requirement for higher anti-cancer for enhanced anti-cancer property? So again, those are your general considerations that you need to highlight in the proposed scope of in the proposed research work scope of the study. This is very important because this helps you define a more focused set of objectives for your proposed work. So, for example, um, in terms of nanoparticle size, you could actually propose that, okay, so for this study, we will only be synthesizing nanoparticles within the range of sizes from 1 to 100 nanometers. So by clearly defining this range of size targets, it goes without saying that, oh, obviously anything higher than 100 nanometers will not be covered in the study, and anything smaller than 1 nanometer is also not going to be included in the study. So that helps set the expectations, for your research activities. Now, another important aspect is that it's one thing to control the size, for example. So however, small nanoparticles between 1 to 100 nanometers can come in different shapes. So are you particular about shape? So you can actually say that, oh yeah, this particular approach will make cubic nanoparticles. So you have to say that. But if you don't say that, that very well sets you up for higher expectations, and that are there will be like some lingering questions, like for your review for your funding agencies, such that are they targeting cubic nanoparticles, are they targeting hexagonal nanoparticles? So if you don't define these things, your proposal is subject to a bunch of misinterpretations. So again, clearly defining the scopes and limitation of the study is very important. It speaks highly of the quality of your ideation process and how you did your background research works. Again, this is very important. The second general consideration that you need to define the scope of would be in terms of the total cost. So you actually mentioned earlier, like in the justification, that strategies to reduce nanoparticle synthesis costs would be could be achieved um, from using new organic templating agents, new solvents, and reagents, and even potentially milder reaction conditions. So you have to be able to define, okay, what are the factors that you are controlling, or what are the design elements that you will be implementing in the synthesis method for you to achieve cheaper nanoparticles. So again, you cannot just like broadly say that we will develop strategies to reduce the cost, because paano po i-estimate ng inyong funding agency kung gaano kadaming resources ang kailangan nyo kung wala po silang idea ano bang chemicals yung kailangan nilang gamitin? Kailangan ba nilang bumili ng mamahaling instrument? So these are some of the things that will help the funding agency have a better understanding whether your proposed idea is practical and achievable. So again, it's very important. So the third aspect, or the third general consideration here, is that you're trying to prove, say, for example, anti-cancer property. So, the question of, are you going to be doing in vivo studies? Are you going to be, using animal subjects for this? Or are you just going to be using bioassays that are less complicated? So, you have to be able to define that. And like I said, a well written proposal has a clearly defined set of scopes and limitations. Again, if you're just coming up with very broad statements that are rather hand wavy in nature, mas mahirap po yung mapondohan. So again, in dito sa box that I'm showing on the slide, the importance of scope and limitation, it is important for you to define what your research project will and will not cover. And your scope and limitation should be compatible with the resources and expertise that are available. So yun po, like I said, if you only have 1 year to work on this, you're not going to propose a scope of work that would take you 4 years to finish. Again, dito po makikita yung, like this will indicate how mature your ideation exercise is. If you can, again, specify a practical set of work within a given period of time, and considering the resources that you have in terms of money, in terms of equipment, if you do it, if the scope matches the resources, that typically is a sign of a mature researcher, and funding agencies will trust those people all the more, because ang message po is that, oh, they know what they're doing, so we should give them the money. Why would we give it to someone who cannot really clearly define what they want to do? Research methods is the third component of your proposed research work. So you're saying that, oh, I'm gonna prove this, I'm gonna prove that I can make size controlled nanoparticles, but then the question is, how do you prove that? After you have implemented your synthetic methods that's expected to generate size control nanoparticles, the question of, how are you going to prove it? What methods are you going to be using to measure nanoparticle size? What methods are you going to be able, so what methods will you be using to prove size uniformity? So these are things that you should also be able to put into detail. So are you going to be using microscopy to do this? Are you going to be doing X-ray techniques or X-ray spectroscopy to measure the size, and to have a feel of, or to gauge size uniformity? Those specific methods will need to be mentioned in the research proposal. Again, to clearly show your funding agency that you know what you are doing. When it comes to nanoparticle costs, what are the specific synthetic techniques that you have in mind? You don't have to specify just one, perhaps like a subset of techniques that you think you can adapt that will reduce the cost. And then again, these are based on prior knowledge and prior established information. So again, the more specific you are when it comes to the approach, the more confident your funding agencies will be. The third would be something related to the anti-cancer property. What are those specific research methods? So again, you have to specify. Again, scope of work, clearly defined research methods. It's gonna help you justify, like the level of funding that you're requesting for. Do you need 50,000 pesos? Do you need 1 million pesos? Do you need 10 million pesos to be able to do this job? Your funding agency won't be able to award you with a sufficient level of support if they don't have an idea of the methods and the resources that you need to be able to implement or to execute the study. So once you have established a strategy in terms of how you're gonna achieve the results, through your research methods, it is now then very important for you to highlight in your proposal the impact or the importance of the study. So this typically is a section in itself. So some it typically is titled, like anticipated value of the research, or like the benefits, or the impacts of the study. And so there's a wide range of importance that you can highlight. So for example, you can answer the questions: are you solving a local, national, or a global issue? Are there economic benefits from your proposed research project if you are successful? So there's a bunch of resources, like from which you can get these information. So you can look at industry reports, government and market research, or studies. Whenever you are stating some of these benefits, it is most important that these are also still based on um, established information. So you just don't say that, oh, this is gonna solve the world's problem. But then if they ask you then why and how, you should be able to answer them, and you should also be able to um, refer to reputable studies and knowledge. So again, medyo ito po ay characteristic tendency of most of us, especially those who are not really that experienced in terms of writing research proposals. So we tend to claim big things, we tend to use big words, but then the question is, can you back it up with information, with verifiable information? So, if the answer is no, then, you have to be able to substantiate like all those claims. It's very important. Another set of potential impacts of a particular study would be, are you improving consensus knowledge when it comes to that field? Are you redefining, or are you changing up the understanding of a particular subject matter? So these are some of the things that you should also highlight. It doesn't necessarily have to be of an economic impact. It could just be that you're contributing to fundamental science knowledge, and you should be able to um, highlight that as well. So and how do you again substantiate um, these such impacts? You can refer to patents, you can refer to scientific reports, you can refer to technical reviews that would put into context like why your result is really of importance. So it is very important again that you have uh, that you're establishing like these claims, with verifiable background information. Again, claims should be information based. It's you don't say typically this is just like two or three paragraphs. Depending on how depending on the number of importance of your project. I mean, there's really no such restriction. The last section of the research proposal would be the references section. So as I have mentioned earlier, a research proposal is a combination of ideas, of related studies that other people may have established. And then it could also, parts of your ideation or of your approach could come from discussions with experts, with collaborators. It is very important that we give reference to those sources of information. So cite books, cite scientific reports, cite scientific conference presentations, and even one-on-one discussions with experts. Say if you talk to another teacher, and that teacher suggests a very important part of the idea, you should cite them. You should give them credit. Again, hindi po bababa ang kalidad natin bilang mga mananaliksik or researchers if we pay tribute, or if we give credit to people who who establish these information before us. So sabi nga nila, we stand on the shoulder of giants. So it's by referencing them, we are acknowledging the importance of their work. Okay, so far we have already covered the definition of a research proposal. We have gone over the five most common parts of a research proposal. So title and proponents, summary, body of the proposal, anticipated value of research or the significance of the study, and then references. So at this point, we're gonna switch gears, and I will be introducing you to topics relevant to research project management. So, and what are these sections? So specifically for the succeed for the remaining slides, I will talk about expertise and research management. I will talk about contributions to training and development. That a research proposal, that a research project can deliver, and then lastly, very briefly, we will touch on intellectual property. Okay, so research planning and management. So when you're writing up research proposals, most funding agencies will not only require for you to talk about the technical aspects of the work, the scientific um, and technology aspects of your proposal, but since you're proposing for the topic, or you're asking for support for the project, you're asking for funding for the project, it is very important that you also have a very good understanding, or you're quite skilled at breaking down the budget requirements of the project. So typically sa mga funding calls po, they would ask for you to come up with a breakdown of costs, or expenses. So those expenditures can cover supplies and equipment. They can cover testing and service fees. Say if you're going to be working with um, analytical laboratories to do your characterization. So you have to be able to have an idea of like how much those costs would be. So again, monetary resources is one thing, but then time is also a very important resource that you have to keep in mind. So they will also ask for you to define a timeline for your project. So, the timeline typically provides a breakdown of activities that are involved to originate or to start and finish a project. And then most of these funding agencies will require for you to come up with a schedule of milestones. So, if you have three main objectives, how much time would be allocated to achieve, say, like the first objective of the project. So you have to put that into details. Again, it's not only the monetary resources that you are trying to actually put into detail in the research proposal, but you are also making sure that your funding agency has a good understanding as to when these milestones, or the results are to be delivered, and that will also give them a sense: is this really a practical plan? Can they really cover the work? Kaya ba nilang tapusin to in just like how long? Like 9 months? If the subject matter experts in your funding agency think otherwise, na hindi posibleng magawa nila to, more likely they will not give you the funding. But um, again, if your work scope, the budget you're requesting, and then the timeline that you're proposing are actually within practicality, more likely they will give you the support that you're asking for. Okay, so down to our last two slides. So these are additional sections that some funding agencies request for proposals to include in the package. So the first of which is expertise and research management. So and this is more relevant to college level research, mainly because funding agencies typically would prefer to give the funding to groups working on research programs who have the necessary set of expertise to achieve the goal. They have to be able to identify, or to emphasize that in the proposal, that we do have the right set of expertise to achieve the goal. It is also very important, like in this section, for you to um, establish who will be managing all the research activities and resources. So, that's typically the research lead. So you also have to identify which um, um, specific parts of the project are to be conducted by um, certain members. So are there going to be students participating in this program? Are there going to be seasoned researchers? Are there going to be some collaborators? So all of those you actually specify in this section. Okay, and then typically after this is a discussion of the contribution of of this research project and all its activities to the development of certain personnel. So say for example at the high school level, um, those who would benefit much from the research activity will more likely be the students. So the question of um, will this research project and all its activities um, impart knowledge to the students in specific areas. So it's very important that you highlight them. Secondly, well, the activities or the experiments prove their problem solving skills. So you also have to be able to verbalize that in the proposal. And then, well, the conduct of this research developed an inclination for them to later on pursue careers in this specific area of study. So again, it's not only about the technical deliverables, it's not only about budget and timeline, but mentorship. Mentorship is a very important aspect as well that in most cases are required to be highlighted whenever you are writing up research proposals. Okay. And then the last additional um, project management component that you guys have to consider when you are writing research proposal would be intellectual property. So during the course of ideation and when you're putting together and when you're writing up your research proposal, you will have um, covered a lot of relevant literature, and then along with understanding the consensus knowledge in that field, you will have identified certain gaps where you know um, intellectual property opportunities could arise. So if you see the need to say develop size controlled nanoparticles at 5 nanometers, and you're quite sure that oh, this could be the solution that's needed to come up with one of the most potent anti-cancer treatments, then such ideas and potential discoveries will comprise, they comprise an intellectual property. So even as early as in the ideation stage, you should be able to identify which amongst the milestones could be patented, which within the milestones you can license like with the company to to earn a profit. Hindi lang yung pag-iisip po ng invention, hindi lang po siya dapat after the fact or after the experiment. If you're actually quite confident with the quality of your idea, if you're confident with its originality, in as early as in the proposal, in the ideation and proposal stage, you should also be at least mindful that okay, these are the opportunities that are going to come up, and that should also um, set the tone for how you're going to be highlighting the ideas. And in most funding research funding applications, they ask they typically have a clause as to who will be owning the intellectual property after the project has actually been done. So you have to be very mindful. If they fund your idea, will they own the patent? And would you be fine with it? So these are things that you have to be able to consider. So again, hindi lang po basta kayo lagay ng idea dyan. You have to anticipate, like values of the values of the ideas that you are putting together and of the research work that you are proposing. Okay, so I guess that's mostly it for this talk. So I'm hoping that after this discussion, you will have already at least learned like what a research proposal is all about, what its essential elements are. I'm hoping that like some of the tips and best practices that I mentioned earlier did stick, and you can apply them to come up with more compelling and convincing research proposals. And um, yeah, and I'm also hoping that like your introduction to the concepts of project management, I'm hoping that like your ideation and research planning exercise will become an enjoyable one. And like by being aware of all these aspects of research ideation, of research proposal and planning and management, this is not going to become like a fairly daunting and stressful activity. And I'm hoping that by having a good understanding of all these elements, the entire process of research will become a fulfilling and a fun activity between you and your teachers, between like between everyone involved. Okay, so a couple of very important takeaways that for you would be that whenever you're justifying something, an idea, an approach, a research method, it has to be based on verifiable information. And then secondly, a clearly defined research scope and limitation is very important in terms of um, showing how mature and skilled you are when it comes to the ideation process, and also at the same time it gives your funding agency the confidence in giving you the right amount of resources and support. Okay, so having covered all these, so JP Onya will be talking about strategies on how you can present your ideas effectively in the form of a pitch, and then Marty Mateo, for the third part of the study, will give you an idea of funding agencies that are existing in the Philippines, through which you might be able to get funding. So yun, maraming salamat po. And towards the end, I will be entertaining some questions. Mabuhay po kayo. Okay, so ako po ulit si Jeffrey Buling. So that was a recorded version of the webinar po because again, I wasn't really sure if meron po kaming kuryente dito because of the winter storm. So now we're gonna be moving on to JP Onya's presentation on how to build an effective research pitch. So after you write your proposal, how do you present it? Like in face-to-face interactions with, say, competition judges, if you're in front of a judging panel for funding proposals, how do you effectively convince them that your idea is great and that it's worth funding and that it's worth winning funding grants?
Yep. Thank you very much, Doc Jeff. So, the title of my presentation for this morning is Building an Effective Research Pitch. And I will also share some tips on how to defend your research in front of a panel if you're applying for a seed funding, or just to introduce your research to the general audience. Okay. But before anything else, I would like to introduce myself. My name is JP Onya, and I'm a graduate of Bachelor of Chemistry in Chemistry from UPLB. I graduated in 2008, and right after that, I worked in the industry, and I became a chief chemist at Petron in the Philippines. And in 2016, I pursued masteral studies. So, and I graduated in 2018 from Åbo Academy University in Finland. But the program was an Erasmus program uh, at, in which the University of Tartu in Estonia was the host. Okay. So right now I'm pursuing doctoral studies in Åbo Academy here in Finland. And throughout my career as chemist, my research interest would include analytical chemistry, electrochemistry, and catalysis, specifically electrocatalysis. So, yep. But today I will be discussing um, how to build an effective research pitch. And I will be sharing some of the knowledge that I have imbibed from the university, because here in Finland they are very heavy on research to business process. So, and in those like activities, you really have to pitch your research idea so that it moves on to fruition or gets funded and be realized. So I will be sharing like the basic structure and some practical tips in delivering the research pitch, so to speak. Okay, next slide. So the most basic question is, what is a research pitch? So basically, a research pitch is a short speech that you deliver so that you could introduce your research, to a panel of audience, and to a certain purpose. Maybe it to seek funding, or seek funding for the research project, to introduce yourself as working on that research, to introduce your group, or to um, like elicit special attention to your team, and or even like invite somebody to join your team. So this is a very short speech, not more than 3 minutes, because you would only like introduce yourself, and don't go too much into detail, because uh, you're only given a very limited time for this. So uh, next slide. And the goal of the research pitch is to captivate your audience, and get them interested in the work that you do. So uh, we don't you don't share too much detail, because the purpose of a research pitch is to just um, spark an interest, or start a conversation about your research, and get them asking questions. So if you could liken it to a TV commercial, uh, you don't really get too much into detail, but just to give the impression of the just to give a total impression of the research project that you are working in, and what items would you like to uh, what actions would you like to elicit from the audience. Okay, next slide. So here are the basic elements of a research pitch, and uh, I wouldn't really go prescribe a specific format for a research pitch, because it's up to you. But these are the basic elements, or the essential components that should be present in a research pitch. So there should be a context, and I just derived this from the research proposal presentation that Doc Jeffrey presented earlier, and this is quite similar in structure. You have the context, or the background of the research, the statement of the problem or the research question, your proposed study or your proposed solution to that research question, and the benefits that you offer uh, through this research, and the actions, or the actions that you want to elicit from the audience, be it like to support you financially through seed funding, or just to get them visiting your website, to introduce your group, um, and things like that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so let's start with providing the background or the context of your research. So you could probably start your research pitch by citing a real world problem. So that would be setting the platform or the springboard for your research. So magsisimula tayo sa real world problem to which you derived the research question. Or you could start by um, contextualizing your research, contextualizing your research, and situating your research in the grander scheme of research in the world. So it goes both ways. So you could start with a problem, or you could start by introducing your research as a specific aspect of a broader picture in that area of study. So this will already give the audience a sense of what you are trying to solve. And can you go to the next slide? So here you could provide you can cite news articles, reports from veritable institutions, or previous studies that you derived the research from. Next slide. And once you have given the context or the background of your research problem, you could go on to explicitly mention the problem statement or the research question. So from the background, you try to narrow it down to the level of the research problem so that ma-contextualize natin yung research question. Okay? Next slide. So just an example for that. So let's say that the background or the context is cancer as a leading cause of death in the world. So from that background, you can segue into metal nanoparticles have been studied as anti-cancer agents. However, they are expensive. So from this statement itself, you can already see that uh, there is something to be investigated, which is metal nanoparticles, and how will you be able to uh, what aspects of the problems are you trying to solve or resolve, which is the cost. Okay. Next slide. So after stating the problem or the research question, you could then go on to state the proposed study or the proposed solution to the research question. So here, um, you could uh, you could say the approach that you are going to take and why it is special. So what are the strengths of the approach that you are trying to carry out? And you can also mention here the milestones or the breakthroughs that you have already achieved and the results that you are expecting to get, and what these results could lead to, or what the research could lead to in the future. So kung ano yung kahihinatnan ng research mo, and what possible positive outcomes that could come up from your research. Okay, next slide. So for example, the proposed solution to this uh, problem of metal nanoparticles as anti-cancer agents, a research project on the development of cheap and size uniform gold nanoparticles is proposed. And this program can make high efficacy anti-cancer drugs more accessible. So here, it is quite clear that you're trying to address the cost of production of these gold nanoparticles and test them as anti-cancer agents. So dun pa lang kita mo na yung uh, parang approach that you're trying to get at. Next slide. So after that, after proposing the solution, you could go on to state the benefits as to who or what will benefit from the research. And here, you can cite the direction that this research is going towards, and the possible directions that it can go on to the future. So if you have started, if especially if this is a pioneering work, so what other research could stem out of this research, and the possible positive outcomes it can bring out to the world. Okay. So here, next slide, please. And after that, you could urge to take an action or call for an action to the audience, be it by um, trying to ask for seed funding for the project, um, introducing your team, or getting partnerships, or get them to know more about your research by visiting your website. So you could uh, probably invite them at this point as a closing statement. Okay, next slide. So try to be convincing enough so that the audience uh, are drawn to you or gravitate towards you, because research pitch is all about getting attention and really trying to spark an interest from an audience, and be convincing enough so that it's an easy yes for you. And let's say if you're trying to get the seed funding, be credible and reliable enough uh, to be that person, to be the perfect man for the job. Okay, next slide. So here is an example script for a research pitch, and allow me just to read it. Okay, so I'm just gonna like set the tone for let's say that uh, I'm doing a research pitch and you are the audience. Okay, so let me start. Now, now, now. Every 2 seconds, a person gets diagnosed with cancer all around the world. Despite the great advances in medical research, highly effective anti-cancer drugs are yet to be developed. Metal nanoparticles have been extensively studied as anti-cancer agents. Reports suggest that size-uniform nanoparticles are more effective as anti-cancer agents. However, they are expensive. Our team's goal is to produce cheap, size-uniform gold nanoparticles as anti-cancer agents. The method that we are developing uses cheap organic templates and milder synthesis conditions that will significantly reduce the cost of gold nanoparticles. Through our research, we can make high efficacy anti-cancer drugs more available or more accessible. To know more about our research and our team, visit us at www.endcancernow.com. Support us today and help us make expensive cancer treatments a thing of the past. So, something to that effect, because you can see here that from the script, you have already provided the background, the research problem or research question, your proposed solution, and the action that you would like to take or elicit from the audience. So this is a simple example script, but if you are aiming for financial support or seed funding for the research, you could probably add here the budget that you're asking for, and a breakdown of on how you're going to utilize that fund. Or you can also add the timeline, especially what you have indicated in the research proposal, the timeline and the deliverables that you promise to the financier or the supporting institution. Okay, next slide. So after giving you the basic structure of a research pitch, I would go on to share some practical tips for a research pitch, namely um, being clear and understandable, using keywords, knowing your audience, showing your sincerity, and practice. And we will go this one by one. Okay, next slide. So first and foremost is uh, be clear and understandable. So when you're presenting in front of an audience, it's very important that you are clear with your words, you're articulate, and you enunciate every word that you say. And you're not rushing, because um, when you're nervous, you actually speak faster than you would normally do. And so you should always practice good pacing, and you try to speak more well slowly, so that you become more understandable and clear. And also use dramatic pauses, especially when you're trying to emphasize a point, or trying to give a specific important aspect of the research pitch. Okay, so be clear and understandable, take your time, and articulate and enunciate all your words. Next up is using keywords. So it is not advisable that you deliver the research pitch by reading from a script, because that's a complete turn off for the audience. But you could use note cards just to take cues from the slides, or by highlighting there in the slides some keywords that you could pick up and elaborate on, or you could bring note cards with you on the stage, and that will like enforce or trying to emphasize all the important points of the of the of the message that you're trying to deliver. And do not be afraid to repeat like keywords or the exact same words a couple of times for emphasis, because you're only given 1 minute, and if that's the impression or the idea that you're trying to leave the audience, then it's no problem. You could repeat the exact same words a few times. Next slide. So know your audience. So it's very important to be relatable to the audience, and speak their language. So before delivering the research pitch, try to know if there are technical people, or you're speaking to a general audience or to lay people. That way, you will be relatable, and people won't really tune out when you're talking, because they really don't understand. And try to avoid using jargons or technical terms, because you have to remember that you are much more knowledgeable on the topic that you're talking about than the audience. So try to level your tone or your language in a way that you're easily understandable and relatable to the audience, and also be prepared to answer questions. So when you're speaking in front of a highly technical set of audience, then you have to be really prepared to answer questions, and really know your research by heart, so that you're ready to answer anything
Yep.
that is thrown at you.
And JP, if I may add,
Yep.
this is like a very good opportunity to also emphasize this point to them. So, gaya po nung sinabi ko kanina, whenever you're claiming a certain benefit or advantage or significance of your study, medyo sakit na po ito ng karamihan po sa atin. And typically when you're not really, you don't have like much experience doing research, ang tendency po kasi natin is if we think that if we say more, magaling tayo. If we claim big results or milestones, mas magaling tayo. But then we also have to keep in mind that if we use big words, if we claim big things, you're also exposing yourself. You're vulnerable because it's very easy for the people that you are talking to ask you why and how. What's your proof? So whenever you make such sweeping statements, make sure po, like yung sinabi ko po kanina sa webinar ko, your claims should be information-based. So that is the practice that I would like for you really to take away from this. And then JP highlighted a very important point po, that if you are talking to a panel of scientists, then you adjust your language to your audience. If your judging panel are business people, kung businessman yan, eh hindi po kayo mag hardcore science talk kasi hindi po kayo magkakaintindihan.
You
So
should be talking money.
yeah. So you should adjust your language and your vernacular to the audience that you have. So kailangan suitable po 'yan. Kung ang pinakamagandang analogy po diyan, kung ang kakausapin niyo po ay ang lola niyo, dapat maiintindihan ng lola niyo yung inyong sinasabi. Kung ang kakausapin niyo po ay pamangkin niyo na nasa kindergarten, dapat po maiintindihan nung kausap ninyo. Okay, JP,
Yep.
thank you.
That's a very valid point. So don't sabotage yourself by putting things there that say big words that you won't be able to that you won't be able to explain.
Yep.
So
And even during presentation, JPA, kasi makikita natin sa
yeah,
research presentations and even lectures, people, yun nga po, meron po kasi tayong tendency na if we mention highfalutin terms, yung malalalim na mga salita,
exactly.
parang ang dating po sa atin nun, ang galing-galing natin. Pero
Mm-hmm.
the question really is, do we understand the subject matter? If
Yep.
the answer is no, then don't show anything on
Mm-hmm.
during a presentation that you cannot really speak clearly about.
Yep.
Kasi at the end of the day, tayo yung mapapahiya dyan.
And preparation is key.
And one very important thing to add din po is whenever you are, you're developing a pitch, you're trying to send a message across. It doesn't end there, because whenever you're presenting your research idea, it is a discourse. It's a two-way communication. So one very important practice that I encourage you to do is to always anticipate ano ba yung possible questions that they might ask you. And then prepare to answer those questions. Because if kapag tinamaan po kayo ng swerte at natanong sa inyo yung pinaghandaan ninyo, smart niyo, para po yung mga nasa
It's
beauty
your lucky
contest,
day.
yung mga nasa beauty contest na nagsusulat po ng mga tanong. Hinihanda yung sagot kasi it's a matter of chance,
Yep.
Sometimes fortune favors the brave and the prepared.
Yep. So prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
Next slide. And another key aspect is to show your sincerity. So you should remember that you're talking to humans, actual humans, who are very very sensitive to emotions. So then go that direction. Show emotions, because that way you could express your sincerity to the audience, and show that you are passionate about the work that you do and the things that you are saying. And if you show your emotions and sincere about it, that the audience will feel it, and then they will naturally gravitate towards you. Okay, next slide. And practice, practice, practice. So we mentioned earlier that preparation is key, or preparation is really everything. So you should practice, practice, practice. Try to record yourself and see like the nuances of your movements, or if you're trying to focus too much on your note cards, or you're not like looking at the audience. So you should practice. And it's also good practice to uh, rehearse before a live audience and get feedback. So that way, you could anticipate the questions that will be that are coming, and if there's something not clear about the discussion that you're doing. Next slide. Yep. So I'm down to my summary slide. So this morning, we talked about the research pitch, the structure, and the main purpose of delivering a research pitch, and the essential elements of a good pitch. So, and it is we take our cue here from the research proposal, only that we make the research proposal into a very concise form that is easily understandable, and creating a big impact on the audience. And lastly, I mentioned here some practical tips and giving us a research pitch uh, that you could use. So this is just a primer of what we're gonna deliver, because we will have a separate course on presentation on conferences that will come, I think, sometime in May. Yeah. So watch out for that. We will like share pointers on how to deliver a conference presentation. So it's a bigger audience, and a longer presentation. So keep an eye on that, and yeah, just be confident, and again, preparation is the key in making this research pitch. Yep. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. And I think
All right, thank you.
yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go po.
Thank you, Mr. JP, for that very informative webinar talk. So our the third part of our webinar is will be delivered by our head of content and creatives, Mr. John Marty Mateo. So he will be talking about how and where to apply for funding in the Philippines. So this is a very important topic, ano, kung saan tayo pwede kumuha ng funding sa ating research. So uh, again, we will take all questions at the. We will have a Q&A portion at the end of the Marty's talk. He's our last but not the least speaker. So, Mr. Marty, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Ma'am Dindy. I will just set up my screen.
And medyo naka-overlap na po kami sa lunchtime niyo, ano po. So feel free to grab your food and while you're tuning into Marty's presentation.
Ayun nga sasabihin ko sana. Sana po pwede po kayo mag-grab ng lunch while I'm doing my presentation. So my presentation is the less technical one. So nalatag na po ni Kuya Jeff and ni Kuya JP yung technical aspects of research proposal and research pitch. So before I proceed to my talk, I would like to introduce Marty Mateo and Jeff and graduate Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry, and I'm also a registered chemist. So right now, I am a university researcher at UPLB and the head chemist at the Institute of Plant Breeding. I am involved in 11 approved externally funded projects that are completed and ongoing, and approximately the worth of I'm involved as project leader or all of those variety and of. So this is my career as a researcher and as so I started my research career at UP Diliman at the Natural Science Research Institute or NSRI. I started as a university research associate. So my topic there was material science and polymer chemistry. And then after 3 years, I transferred to UP Los Baños at the Institute of Chemistry. So I taught general chemistry and organic chemistry laboratory classes for 1 year. And then I decided to go back to research in 2016 and applied at the Institute of Plant Breeding as a university researcher. And I'm still plant breeding. So I'm the head of the analytical chemistry laboratory of the institute. And I have published 5 ISI Scopus Index journals and also 2 peer-reviewed papers. So, sinabi ko na nga kanina na layout na na discuss na ni Kuya JP and ni Kuya Jeff yung mga technicals. Now, what are the opportunities of the high school students and college students in terms of funding their research? So, nung high school ako and nung college ako, wala akong idea kung saan ako kukuha ng research fund. Basta ang alam ko, kailangan kong kumuha ng advisor na meron ng gamit at saka meron ng readily available materials para magamit ko for my thesis. So, hindi ko talaga naisip na mag-apply for funding sa mga different funding agencies in the Philippines. So now, I will be opening or introducing to you the different funding that I have searched in the Philippines for high school and college students. So actually, while I am searching for fundings here in the Philippines, na-discover ko or na-observe ko na most of the fundings are really for graduate students. Meaning to say, those who are taking masters and PhD degrees here in the Philippines, maraming opportunities. But in terms of undergraduate students and high school students, limited lang. Pero meron. So yung limited at meron na yun ay i-discuss ko ngayon sa aking talk. So before I proceed with my talk, let me just have a simple exercise for you to answer. So just go to menti.com and type the code 1783387. So i-share ko po yung screen na yon para makita po natin. So papakita ko rin po ulit yung code. So wait lang po.
Marty, just remind those who are tuning in using their phone, so they might not be able to participate kasi sila ng Zoom. So baka, yun.
Yeah. Para po dun sa mga nagpa-participate ng phone lang po ang gamit, baka po hindi kayo makaparticipate. Pero kung may laptop po kayo and may cellphone, pwede po kayo makaparticipate. Or kung may isa pa po kayong device na pwedeng gamitin, you can actually use that. So ito po yung i-present ko. So ayan po yung question at yan po yung code para po makita nyo sa Menti. Ayan. So makikita po natin dito kung sino-sino ang mga sources of funds ng ating mga students. Siguro mostly students po ito. Sige, I will give you around 1 to 2 minutes to answer para po makita natin kung saan po kayo kukuha ng funds.
Medyo nakakagulat yung personal savings, Marty.
Oo nga. College and high school students, meron silang personal savings.
Yeah. And yeah, so ito pong talk ni Marty, we really wanted to do this now kasi after po namin kayong bigyan ng information on how to write proposals, it's very important for you to be familiar with funding institutions in the Philippines. So yun po yung information na share sa inyo ni Marty. So watch out po. He has a long list of those.
Alright. So pinakamadami, kasi yung ito pa isang word cloud, so ang pinakamadami po na sumagot ay DOST. Marami rin pong nagsabi ng parents and personal savings. Meron din pong government, meron din pong school. Sino si Albert? Meron po bang funding na Albert? LGUs?
Baka pwede din tayong apply ng funding dyan kay Albert.
Yeah. So ayan, marami po tayong nakikita. So I'll stop this in 30 seconds. Alright, so sa participants po natin na 113 na nagsagot, ang pinakamarami po nasagot nila is from DOST, from the government, and from personal funds and from their parents. So yun po ang kanilang sagot sa funding. Okay. So mabuti po yan kasi alam nyo po yung limitation ng inyong funding, kung saan po kayo makakuha. Meron po naglagay ng DOST, so that's good. They know that they have funding, they know na merong opportunities for funding sa DOST and also sa government. So resume ko lang po ang aking presentation. Ayan. So, bakit nga ba mahalaga yung funding? So, kung tutuusin, hindi naman tayo lahat may personal savings or hindi naman tayo lahat may pera for our SIPs and thesis. So, kailangan natin ng extra funding para makonduct yung ating thesis and SIP. So, bakit nga ba important ang funding? So, first, nilagay ko dyan, it will widen the scope of your research. So, sinabi namin dati before in the ideation state and also in designing the experiments that your scope and limitation will depend on your resources and time. So if you have more resources or more funding, it will widen your research. So it will widen the scope of your research. So hindi ka lang limited sa kunwari isang parameter or dalawang parameter. So pwedeng maraming parameters kasi meron kang funding. And also, it will improve the quality of your research because if you are going for funding grants sa mga funding agencies or research grants sa mga funding agencies, it will go rigorous screening para matanggap ka for that specific grant. So it will also translate that your proposal or your thesis will be of good quality. And last but not the least, researches with fundings tend to have more societal impact. Kasi sinabi ko nga kanina, competitive ang grants, research grants sa mga high school and college students. So, ang pinipili nila most likely ay yung merong societal impact. So, let's now go to the opportunity. So, actually nag-search ako ng mahabang panahon and dalawa lang yung nakita kong research grants for high school and college students. The other ones actually are embedded in scholarships. So, kung hindi ko po i-discuss dito yung scholarships kasi iba yon sa research grants. Ang mga scholarships po na may research grants are of course DOST scholarships. So, if you are scholar ng DOST in college and high school, they will allot a certain amount of fund for your research. Like say, for example, I think for undergraduate students, 10,000 pesos research grant for their thesis. And also in high school, kapag po ikaw ay nasa Pisay, meron din po kayong certain amount of research grant. And also, meron din pong scholarship ang DA BAR. So that's Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Agricultural Research. Meron silang scholarship for agriculture-related courses. At nag-o-offer po sila ng research fund na 50,000 pesos. So, kailangan lang po nilang i-apply yan after their presentation of their proposal with advisor. So, yun po ay embedded sa mga scholarships. So, hindi ko po yun inilagay sa presentation na ito kasi iba po yung scholarship sa research grants. So, ito po yung dalawang research grants na nakita ko na available for undergraduate students and high school students. So ayan, ang tanong, where do I get my funding? So ito na po yan. So ang first na nakita ko po is the DOST, Philippine Council for Health, Research and Development. So DOST, PCHRD, they have this undergraduate research grant in natural products. So this will be for college students only. So how to apply? Ito po yung aking i-discuss for today. Ang nakalagay po dyan, ang eligibility, you should be a student of the following programs, either chemistry, pharmacy, nursing, or health and allied fields. Pero dapat po ang inyong topic is concerning natural products of plants. So meron po silang definitive na qualification. Dapat po ay plants po ang gagamitin nyo because this is in coordination with the Tuklas Lunas program, drug discovery of the PCHRD and DOH. So you must use indigenous plants in your region. So kung example po, ikaw ay UP Los Baños, so you are in region 4A. So ang plant na gagamitin mo for your research should be in region 4A. And kung nasa Palawan State University ka naman, pwedeng region 4B yun and other regions. And your projects must be completed 1 year after the grant. So bawal po ang ma-extend. So kailangan you should know the bounds and scope of your research para po matapos siya in 1 year. So how to apply? Ito po yung mga kailangan nyo. Ito po ay lahat ay nasa website nila. So pwede nyo po itong i-research mamaya. Ibibigay ko po ang website. So first, you need to accomplish the prescribed research proposal form with college seal. So ipapasel nyo po ito sa inyong college. By the way, nakalimutan ko pala kanina dun sa mga students of the following programs. Hindi naman po limited sa chemistry, pharmacy, and nursing. So pwede rin pong biology, botany, pwede rin pong agriculture and forestry kasi nagdi-deal din naman po sila sa plants. So if they're going for natural products research, pwede rin po silang mag-apply ng grants dito sa programang ito. So hindi lang po dyan limited sa mga courses na yan. Pwede pong allied fields for as long as natural products of plants ang inyong thesis topic. So, prescribed research proposal form, mamaya po ipapakita ko po ito sa inyo mamaya. And makikita nyo rin po na ito po ay in complementary dun sa diniscuss ni Kuya Jeff kanina, kung ano po ang mga hinahanap sa research proposal. So, i-discuss ko po yan mamaya. And then, your proposal should be endorsed by the institution, signed by the university college dean. So, kung kayo po ay galing sa College of Science or College of Agriculture and Food Science, papapirmahan nyo lang po sa dinyo yung proposal nyo. And you need to also pass a soft copy of your proposal in Word format. Hard copies should also be mailed. So 3 copies po dapat, and certificate of plant authentication. So kailangan nyo po dito ng tulong ng botanist or taxonomist, plant taxonomist. And if your study will concern, say for example, animal testing, you should provide clearances for these types of experiments. And ang mga clearances po na may kailangan ay kung gagamit po kayo ng indigenous plant galing sa IP or indigenous people or tribes, so kailangan nyo po ng IP permit for that. Also, kung ang plant na kinuha nyo ay galing sa ancestral land or sa IP land, kailangan nyo rin pong kumuha ng clearance for that. And of course, if you will use humans for testing and animals for testing, kailangan nyo po ng clearances for that. And last but not the least, you should be able to accomplish a CV of the students and advisor using the prescribed form na makikita lang po sa DOST website ng PCHRD. So, ipapakita ko lang po yung format ng proposal ng Natural Products Research Grant. So, wait lang. Capsule proposal. Nakikita nyo na po? Kuya Jeff, nakikita po?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Ay, hindi pala ito. Hindi pala ito. Ito pala isa YI. So, yung isa. Ito po, yung PCHRD, nakikita nyo, Kuya Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. So, ito po yung PCHRD Undergraduate Thesis Grant on Natural Products Detailed Research Proposal. So, ito po ang inyong i-accomplish. So, dapat may title of the study, name of the students, advisor, contact number, email address, name of the college dean, college and institution, complete institution address, ayan, signature, and then college seal. So ito po yung mga elements na kailangan yung punan, the title of the study, the introduction, so brief summary or background information relevant to the study design and protocol methodology, significance of the proposal, detailed literature review, objectives, expected output, end users or target beneficiaries, detailed methodology, and plans for data processing, so statistical methods, etc., and project duration. And required din po kayo na gumawa ng Gantt chart.
So Marty, mention to them that the Gantt chart is yung timeline.
Yes, yan po yung sinabi ni Kuya Jeff kanina na plan of activities, pero in timeline manner, like year 1, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, tas anong mga activities yung mga naka-align doon. So ganun po yung prescribed na Gantt chart ng DOST. So each objective dapat masasagot ng isang activity, and then i-project nyo po yun sa timeline ng inyong study. So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4, since 1 year lang po ito. And yung clearances na sinabi ko kanina, estimated budgetary requirement, and of course your references or bibliography. Also, humihingi po ang DOST PCHRD ng line item budget. Dito nyo po ilalagay lahat ng supplies na kailangan nyo or testing na kailangan nyo. Also, if magpapa-analyze kayo ng sample sa iba or instruments, kung bibili man kayo ng specific instruments and glassware, ilalagay nyo po yan sa line item budget. And of course, last but not the least, the CV of the proponents and their mentor. So again, katulad po ng sinabi ko, diniscuss na po ni Kuya Jeff kung ano po ang dapat na laman nitong mga ito. Kung ano po yung dapat na effective na laman ng research proposal na ito. So, punta po ulit tayo sa aking presentation. Wait lang po, nawala yung aking presentation. Okay, so wait lang po. Ayan, balik ko na. Ayan. So paano po kayo mapipili for the thesis grant or for the research grant? Ito po yung selection criteria na binanggit po sa website ng PCHRD. First, dapat po merong technical merit. So hinahanapan po nila yan ng SMART objectives. Ito pong SMART objectives na discuss na natin sa research ideation. So pwede nyo pong balikan yung discussion about that. So SMART ang ibig sabihin specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So also dapat po yung design of experiment should support the objectives, and also sampling and methodology are appropriate to your study. Second is the data management. So how you plan data collection is clearly described in your proposal. You also have the quality control procedures for data collection, and the stat analysis are appropriate and described as well in your proposal.
And
Relevance
by the way, Marty, nabanggit mo, statistical design of experiments and treatment of data. So since napaka-critical po niyan sa proposal writing and sa process and sa research project development, ipa-plug ko lang ng Marty, meron po kaming lecture sa April 17 on statistical methods for research. So watch out for that po, coming out of FilSciHub Research University.
Yes, ang dami pong nagre-request niyan, kaya pagbibigyan po namin kayo, kayo naman po lagi namin pong pinagbibigyan. So mag-offer po kami ng statistical analysis for research. Stay tuned lang po for the date and the registration. So third, your research should be relevant and significant. So dapat meron po siyang ina-address na important health issue. Kasi nga po ito po ay PCHRD. So either nag-a-address yan ng cancer, malaria, HIV/AIDS, etc. So yung mga pressing problems po natin right now. And it contributes to the advancement of scientific knowledge. And last but not the least, the proponent or the institution's capacity. So titingnan po ng funding agency kung yung institution po ba or yung researcher is capable to do the research. And also, dapat po there is some kind of matching kasi baka mag-propose kayo ng isang topic na pang master's thesis na, so baka overkill siya, makita nung mga evaluators na hindi na to appropriate for a bachelor's degree. So medyo maalangan po silang i-fund yun kasi nga po this is just for BS degree research grant. So maging maayos lang po yung scope and limitation po natin. And also, dapat match po sa inyong expertise yung gagawin yung research. Kasi hindi naman po kayo pwedeng mag-research nang wala kayong expertise or hindi pa kayo nakakuha ng mga courses, na basic courses na relevant to your research. Okay, now this is where the exciting part is kung magkano po ang makukuha nyo for this research grant. Okay. So for the thesis grant, magkakaroon po kayo ng tumataginting na 50,000 pesos. At ang maganda po dito, ang kalaban nyo po ay mga taga-region nyo kasi dalawang proposal po ang pipiliin per region. So halimbawa sa Region 1, dalawang proposal, up to Region 13, dalawang proposal, and ang apat na special regions natin, meron din pong tigda-dalawang proposal. So yung grant po will be deposited to the advisor's bank account and liquidated at the end of the project. And a memorandum of agreement will be signed between the student's advisor, head of institution, and DOST, PCHRD. So wala na po kayong dapat ipangamba dito sa MOA kasi ang magpe-prepare po niyan ay DOST, PCHRD. Kailangan nyo na lang po siyang basahin at pirmahan. And the grant must be expended based on the approved line item budget. Yun po yung pinakita ko sa inyo kanina na kailangan naka-line item lahat ng kailangan nyo for your research and also the corresponding budget para po sa liquidation, maayos po yung pagko-close nyo ng account or yung pag-spend nyo ng 50,000. And ang maganda po dito sa grant ng undergraduate research grant for natural products, After po ng completion ng project or after 1 year, magkakaroon po ng malaking conference ang PCHRD for all the regions na grantees ng thesis grant na ito, and they will present their output in a conference. Tapos may mananalo po na 3 in that conference, and meron pong additional cash prize. So 30,000 ang matatanggap ng first prize, 20,000 sa students, and 10,000 sa advisor, 22,000 sa second prize, that's 15,000 for the students and 7,000 for the mentor, and 15,000 for the third prize, that's 10,000 for the students and 5,000 for the mentor. And also, lahat po na magpe-present will have a consolation prize of 5,000 pesos for the team. So magkakaroon din po sila ng parang STEM conference katulad nung sa FilSciHub after ng matapos ang kanilang or after the completion of their project. So ito pong important dates na kailangan yung i-take note. So ang second week of June po are usually ang deadline ng submission of thesis proposals. Ito po ay binase ko lang sa 2020 na deadlines. Tapos by July, magse-select na sila ng thesis grantees. And for more information, you can visit the website www.pchrd.dost.gov.ph. So lahat po dyan ay naka-describe in detail kung ano ang gagawin nyo and kung ano ang kailangan nyo i-accomplish for the thesis. Kailangan nyo i-accomplish for the thesis grant. So next one is the DOST Philippine Council for Industry, Energy and Emerging Technology Research and Development, or DOSTP shared Young Innovators Program. So ito po ay open for high school and college students. Okay, so kasama na po yung high school dito. So ano po ba itong Young Innovators Program? So ano po ba yung eligibility niya? So first, you should be a Filipino citizen, not greater than 30 years old. So yun po yung nakalagay sa website nila. You should be a full-time high school, a BS or MS student, and you should not be employed. So full-time and not employed. So for high school students, you are allowed to have up to 10 members, 3 to 10 members. For bachelor's degree students, you are allowed to have 3 members, at most 3 members, and for master students, isa lang po siya. And you should produce a promising idea for innovative research aligned with PSHRD's sectoral priority area. So ano-ano po ba yung PSHRD's sectoral priority area? Ito po ay kinopya ko lang sa PSHRD website. So yan po yung website na nasa baba. Ito po, pshrddost.gov.ph. Yan daw po yung kanilang priority area. So sa industry, ang focus mo nila ay electronics, semiconductor industries, mining and minerals, metal and engineering, food processing, and process engineering. Sa energy naman po, energy efficiency and transportation, emerging technologies, material science and nanotechnology, genomics and biotechnology, information and communications technology, space technology application, photonics, artificial intelligence, data science, and creative industries. At sa special concerns naman po, we have climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction and management, environment, and human security. Alright, so what are the requirements? So again, meron siyang capsule proposal and plan of activities. Again, ito na yung sinabi ni Kuya Jeff kanina sa talk niya na kailangan meron kayong proposal, capsule proposal and plan of activities. You should also accomplish an application form. Also, CV of students, endorsement from sending institution. So dapat po ito ay pirmado ng principal for high school and dean of the college kung BS students. And your budget requirements should be signed by your mentor. And last but not the least, you should be drafting a cover letter of request addressed to PSHRD Executive Director. So ipapakita ko lang po ulit yung format nung capsule proposal ng sa YIP or Young Innovators Program?
Marty, I just would like to highlight, actually, this is good. This is first time that I'm seeing this po. Ako, hindi rin ako familiar sa funding agencies dyan sa atin at opportunity sa high school level. So, ito po, babanggitin ko lang ngayon. Wala pa po akong may promise na date, na specific date. Ito po siguro yung magandang opportunity later on kapag naka-recruit kami ng marami pang ibang mga scientists na hopefully ma-mentor namin kayo if you are planning to participate in these funding calls. So watch out lang po dun sa mga developments sa program. If once we have hit a critical mass po of scientists who can mentor teams of teachers and students, so hopefully po matulungan namin kayong mag-develop ng mga ganitong proposal. So tune in lang po kayo dun sa Lions Den. If you can participate by all means. We will try to provide you with feedback and guidance to a certain extent, even if perhaps you don't make it to the top 12. But now that I'm also aware of all these opportunities, then malalaman na rin po namin kung ano pong tulong yung pwede namin maibigay sa inyo. So, ang gusto lang po namin gawin sana ninyo is try to familiarize yourselves with the fundamentals of writing up a proposal and how to write one effectively. Yun po. Kasi kapag ganun po, kapag maganda na yung proposal na ibibigay nyo sa mga mentors ninyo, madali na yung discussion. Pero kapag po kasi dumating doon sa point na typically you would approach scientists or experts in the field and your question is, can you give me a topic? So yun po yung medyo mahirap po kasi siyang i-address. But if you have a well put together idea and a preliminary draft of your proposal, it's much easier to forward that to people like us and ask for feedback. So hopefully po, ito yung isa sa mga pagpapanuhan namin, matulungan namin kayo makakuha ng ganitong funding, lalo na yung mga nasa high school level. Okay, Marty?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Kuya Jeff, for that information. So ito po ang capsule proposal. Kung mapapansin nyo po, it's almost the same as that in PCHRD. So what are the details of the research? Yung mentor, institution, address, email address, research title, duration of research. So you should have a problem statement. Significance of the study. So ayan po, may mga nakalagay kung anong mga kailangan yung ilagay dyan. So babasahin nyo na lang po yan. And then you have your objectives, project description or a brief abstract, and your expected outputs. Ano po ba ang kailangan, ano po ba ang ma-generate nyo from this research? And your major activities and timeline, this is like the Gantt chart that I presented earlier. So yung activity that will address the objective and then the timeline. And budgetary requirements, so expenses, laboratory expenses, equipment rental, testing consumables, printing expenses, etc., etc. Ayan. So yan lang po yung capsule proposal ng Young Innovators Program. So stop share ko muna yan at pabalik po ako sa aking presentation. Ayun. So medyo simple lang po actually ang mga requirements. So hindi naman po kayo siguro magtatagal kapag gumagawa po kayo ng proposal, especially with the help of your mentors. Kasi so ito po ang mga criteria, na-preempt na natin yan. So criteria for selection, ang sabi po doon sa website ay researchers track record on research and innovation, and also I think this includes the institution. So may nakita akong question kanina sa Zoom agad-agad na kailangan po ba yung researcher's track record ay maganda agad? Pero for high school students, hindi naman yun applicable kasi nagsisimula pa lang sila. For college students din, hindi rin yun masyadong applicable kasi nagsa-start pa lang din sila in their career. So, ang track record na titingnan dyan most likely is the mentor and the institution. So, yun po yung pakiramdam ko ay titingnan ng funding agency.
And let me just add one more thing. Kasi whenever you're developing proposals like this po, no? You don't have to be secular. Hindi po kailangan nandun lang kayo sa sphere nyo. If you have the ability po to reach out to professors in major universities and collaborate with them, you can drop their names and their institutions in your proposal. So if it's reputation that you're worrying about, you can solve that by trying to collaborate with people who have the reputation. At yun po, you should not shy away from asking questions and initiating discussions, initiating collaborations po. Kasi these major universities, they have extension programs. Yun po, wag lang po kayo dapat mahiya. And on that regard po, if you have questions kung sino po mga pwedeng kontakin, perhaps you can reach out to us. We might be able to help you identify people to reach out to.
That is correct. So kailangan nasa team nyo po, if ever you are proposing for a certain topic in a certain field, you should have, of course, you will have your advisor. Pero pwede po kayong magdagdag ng panel or consultant na galing po sa mga universities that are actually experts on specific fields para po mas ma-boost yung chances nyo dito po sa track record na sinasabi po natin. So kung involved, ilalagay nyo po sa inyong proposal na collaborator po namin si Prof. Jeffrey Bunquin na kunwari ay expert po sa STEM education, blah blah blah. So it will boost your chances of being picked for the grant. And sinabi ko na to kanina, research must align with pressured sectoral priority areas, and the study must exhibit innovation or generation of new knowledge or address a special concern. And last but not the least, must produce at least one of the 6 Ps, preferably product or patent. Yung 6 Ps po are measure of outputs ng DOST. So ang 6 Ps po na binabanggit nila ay ayan nga po, product, patent, publication, partnership, people, and policy. So, may places pa pala. So, places for training. Pero hindi po yun masyadong mahalaga. Ang gusto po ng PSHRD ay preferably product or patent ang ma-produce from your grant. Pero pwede rin naman pong publication. And dito na po, malaki po talaga ang grant ng PSHRD. So, didiscuss ko po itong thesis grant kasi medyo nalula din po ako nung nakita ko ang grant na ito. So, for high school students, meron kayong grant na 12,000 pesos per month. So, imagine if you have 3 members, meron kayong tig for 4,000 per month. That's for a duration of 1 year. Kasi ang kontrata niyo with PSHRD, PCIEERD ay 1 year. Tapos yung sa maintenance and other operating expenses, which includes yung mga sinabi ko kanina, yung pinakita ko yung capsule proposal, 200,000 po ang ibibigay ng PCIEERD for your research. And actually pwede po kayong mag-travel dito sa 200,000. Meron pong kung hindi po restricted ang travel na in the future, pwede po kayong mag-travel for training. Kasi yun po ay supported ng PCIEERD. Kung kailangan nyo mag-train about a certain technology para ma-carry out yung research nyo, pwede po yun. Same is true with BS students. Sa BS students naman, 15,000 per month. So, sa UP, laging mag-isa ka lang eh. So, kung mag-isa ka lang, sa'yo na yung 15,000 per month para ka nang sumesweldo ng 1 taon. And you will have 400,000 pesos research grant. And yun po sa mga teachers dyan, hindi lang po ito para sa mga students. Ang mga mentors po ay magkakaroon po ng honorarium na worth 8,800 pesos per month for a duration of 1 year. So, grabing inspiration na po yung binibigay po ng PSHRD. So, it's up for you to grab it. It's up for you to write a proposal that is innovative and will address a certain sector na priority ng PSHRD.
And you know what? Yeah. And one more thing, Marty, we can even design Lions then in such a way that you know the 12 finalists, we can help them apply for these grants. That is a possible outcome, you know, from here. You know, if come up with a very good proposal, if it's really a very compelling proposal, we will help you develop it. Wala po
That's
kaming
correct.
wala po kaming hidden agenda diyan. Hindi po namin kailangan yung mga ganyang funding.
Yes.
Tutulong lang po kami para para po makakuha kayo ng ganito. So, sumali po kayo sa Lions din at the high school level. Kita niyo na po yung mga benefits na yan. We can help you develop your proposal.
Yes.
If you make it to the semifinals.
Yes, we can actually kunwari po, syempre mga emerging technologies, engineering, syempre marami po tayong experts diyan like si Kuya Jeff. We can use it as leverage in your proposal na sila po ang mga consultant nyo. So you have experts on the specific field na on board sa inyong project. So mabango po 'yan sa mga funding agencies, in other words. So for more information, again, ito po yung approved guidelines ng T-shirt sa YIP or Young Innovators Program. Ito lang po, i-click nyo lang, i-copy nyo lang po yung link na yan and paste it in your Google. Makikita nyo na po yung buong guidelines kung paano natin gagawin itong kung paano itong mag-work tong YIP or Young Innovators Program. So bibigyan ko lang po kayo ng idea kung ano po yung mga na-approve na projects last year. So, skip ko muna to. Ano po yung mga na-approve na research proposals last year? Ay, wait lang po. Nasa kabila ata. Nakikita po, Kuya Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So ito po ang YIP shortlisted applicants na nakuha ko po to last year, 2020. So sa environment and pollution control, meron po diyang from FISI main campus, shock electrodialysis apparatus. From PUP Santa Mesa, we have fungal chitosan-based microbeads, a heavy metal soil-based absorbent, landfill bioremediation through biodegradative activities of Pleurotus ostreatus to high-density polyethylene. For ICT, electronics, and semiconductor naman po, we have ABOT, anti-biohazard robot, Arduino-based physical distancing face shield for visually impaired, South Hill School. Hindi ko alam kung sa dito ata to sa Los Baños. South Hill.
Oh yeah.
We have Snap, a facial recognition system for contact tracing. Startup, kung napanood niyo po yung startup. Di ba meron ganun? Parang makikita facial recognition and then may temperature na pinapakita. An application of artificial intelligence and robotics in preventing COVID-19 cross-infection in Philippine hospitals. So kung makikita niyo po dito sa ICT, electronics, and semiconductor, puro po tungkol sa COVID. Kasi nga po, yun po yung pressing problem right now. You have SPEAR, an ultra-wideband technology-based innovation for search and rescue operations in the Philippines. The study of efficient device called Sailor Padar, system of accurate and effective relief in times of pandemic and disaster and risk reduction. So, an app-based approach reduction of sidewalk installed body energy harvester by a Raspberry Pi. Sa material science naman po, we have from PSI Central Luzon, Project Lingap Langhap, PSI Soc Sargen sa Metals and Engineering, Design and Development of Kulintang Manufacturing Machine. Sa Nanotechnology, we have University of Mindanao, Maine sa Mercury and Lead Detection Kit utilizing D-limonene from sweet orange peelings. And we have from University of Mindanao as well, synthesis of nanocellular beads and nanosilic rice hulls. Tapos renewable energy, we have proton exchange membrane, fuel cell using electrode process from Kaong waste product. So this is from Kabsu. Ayun, so yan na po, binigyan ko lang po kayo ng idea kung ano po yung mga na-approve na thesis proposals. You can draw inspiration from these proposals and make derivative proposals from ito, kung ano po yung mga na-discuss natin this in this article. So, ma-access niyo po yan sa Fisher DOST website. So, babalik lang ulit ako sa aking presentation. So, ito ang important. Nakikita niyo, Kuya Jeff?
Yes.
Ayun, hindi ko ma-present kanina. Okay, ayan. Nagloloko ata ang aking internet. So the deadline for submission is 1st or 2nd week of May for YIP, and the announcement of grantees is 2nd or 3rd week of July. So yan lang po yung important dates. So just to give you a wrap up, bibigyan ko kayo ng one of the 7 habits of highly effective people na isang book ni Stephen Covey. Ang sabi niya, ang habit number 1 is be proactive. So kung wala kayong funding right now, be proactive in searching for funding for your research. Kasi ang funding naman ay hindi yan sa dating sa'yo. Kailangan hanapin mo siya. And kailangan maging proactive ka in writing proposals that is well written, well thought of, and will have a good chance na pondohan ng funding agency. So be proactive. And with that, thank you for listening, and we will so this is the FilSciHub class of 2021 for our research university. Baka may class of 2022 na next year. Sana. Okay, so with that, we are we are entertaining questions na po.
All right, salamat sa ating mga speakers for the very informative talk. So, yeah, we can move on to Q&A. So we'll have a couple of questions. Siguro mga 2 or 3 questions po yung sasagutin namin because of our time limitation. So, unahin na po natin yung tanong. Do you have improved sites or avenue for junior high school students for them to access a science research beginners as in no background pa po? So siguro si Dr. Jeff Bunquin ang makakasagot nito.
Okay. Meron po. Actually, let me share my screen with you. And let me know once you can see it. Nakikita niyo po?
Yes.
Okay, so bale dun po sa FilSciHub Research University, if you go to our website, there's this tab, FSH Research U. Meron po kami ditong menu for science investigatory projects. The contents of the science investigatory project webpage po are all of our training courses specific to science investigatory projects at the high school level. So ito po talaga ang language po na ginamit namin dito is at the level that can be appreciated by high school students. So meron na po kami so far 4 na training courses including this one. So we do have the ideation course delivered by Marty and JP actually and myself. We do have the review of literature delivered by Janice Avarilla. We do have, this is a special topic discussion including one of our core members, Ralph Alomia. So we interviewed advisors of San Pablo City high schools that are winning international competitions when it comes to science investigatory projects. So we had an open forum with them. So you can check these resources po. And then very recently, we also had the session on design of experiments. So the SIP subsection of that was specifically delivered by Ralph Alomia. So ito po mga training courses namin where we are quite mindful po in terms of how we really design the language para po yung high school students po natin, yun po, and realistically speaking po, ang target po talaga namin ditong i-train is nasa high school at college level ng mga estudyante. So we're catering to these specific audiences. Ayun po.
That's great. So, yun, punta lang po tayo sa FilSciHub website. Marami po tayong resources. Okay, so moving on to the next question. We have, it's actually a live question from Marlo Fabia. He will ask via Zoom. So, Mr. Marlo, please go ahead, ask your question.
Hello, sir. My question is in two parts, sir. So I would like to ask how to effectively support and highlight. Number one is a novelty of the research study,
Okay.
or number two are in relation to the emerging technology. This is via information-based approach, given that baseline hypothesis would be expected to be limited during the review of the related literature.
Okay. Medyo loaded yun, and I might ask you to rehash the second question po kasi it's loaded with vernaculars. So yung first question po, sir, is ano po? Could you repeat that? I just want to make sure that I understood it correctly.
Yeah, the first question is how to support and highlight that the study is novel in nature.
Okay. So yun po yung I guess ako po talaga dapat yung sasagot dyan. So I highlighted that earlier, that your ability to highlight that it's novel, it will depend on your access to related literature. Ano po? And I know that it's very challenging in the Philippines kasi wala po tayong subscriptions to journals. If anything po, if you use search engines like Google Scholar, you'll only be able to access the abstract of yung studies po that you think could be related or could be competing with your idea. But even despite the lack of access po to these journal articles or publication journals, what I suggest that you would do is you should write an email to the authors of that specific study, because typically they do have the ability to share copies of the articles with you. So this is very important po, na ano, ma'am, if it's really novel, you have to be able to claim that there is really nothing out there, but you cannot really claim that what you're proposing is novel if wala din po kayong hindi niyo po talaga nagalugad ng maayos yung literature. I mean, in part, you can say that, if anything, this is really something that could be. You have to qualify your language, sir. Kung hindi po ninyo ma-access yung necessary piece of information. Now, did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir. How about the second part? So if it's emerging technology, so basically the related literatures would be limited also. So how would I support that into an information-based
so I
approach?
guess, sir, the way you can frame your your idea as as an emerging technology is by establishing the consensus approach, say for a particular area, sir. So if you're trying to find a solution, say for example, trying to find a cure for diabetes po, and what the idea that you have is really not related to anything that is established out there, then you should highlight what's established out there and how they work, their mechanism of action, how they are designed, and you compare and contrast those established technologies or ideas or solutions. You compare that to what you have. Kapag ganun po kaklaro din, sir, yung pag-contrast nyo with established techniques or ideas or methodologies, madali, sir, i-highlight. Makikita po talaga night and day yung difference na, ay, ito yung established knowledge or solution. But this is what we are proposing that's gonna work. And this is why it is different from this. So kailangan talaga, sir, may lalim. Hindi mo dyan lang babanggitin na, ito yung ginagawa dyan. We believe that this is different. So kailangan medyo po may, you have to go a bit in depth in terms of establishing why your idea is an emerging technology, why it is different from incumbent technologies. Sir,
let me just add no sa first question ni sir. kapag gumagawa tayo ng research proposal and if there is novelty in it, kasama sa pag-write ng research proposal yung prior art search. Parang alam mo to, Kuya Jeff, alam mo to sa mga patent. So
Yeah.
there are, 'di ba? 'Yon, kailangan mo talaga siyang i-search. So that is exhaustion of all the patents and literatures related to your research. And also dapat ilalagay mo actually yung prior art, kung ano yung mga na-search mo sa
And
prior art
yeah,
search.
and sir, and to add to that, good thing that you brought that up. Sir, dun sa review of literature training course namin dito, part of that was intellectual property. Kung paano po ba talaga kayo magse-search ng intellectual property space? Kasi more likely, sir, if your idea is really an emerging technology, first you will not see journal academic papers on that about that. Wala po talaga kayo makikita. But then yung vulnerability po nun is there's a bunch of information buried na naitago po sa patent literature. So yung last resort po ninyo, actually ito po ay dinascuss ko rin doon sa webinar na yon. Yung last level po of search nyo of confirmation will be in the patent literature. Doon na lang po yun, sir. And you have to learn how to appreciate the language of patents. Kasi hindi po siya straightforward, sir. So you have to keep reading patents. And fortunately, sir, patents, there are some patents that are freely accessible sa Google Patents po. So you should go there. But I suggest that you check out our webinar on that kasi meron po kami ng tutorial paano ba mag-search ng intellectual property, specifically patent. Paano siya i-interpret? And how you can actually use that as a very critical piece of information in your review of literature.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Welcome po.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess this is for Marty. So meron po tanong dito. I'm curious po, what would happen, or rather, what penalties will be given when a fund granted project or research is not finished within the allotted time? So pag hindi mo natapos on time, anong punishment, penalty?
Nakalagay po actually yan sa guidelines. No, hindi ko na lang po diniscuss kasi masyadong hahaba. Pero if you want to dissect the guidelines of both of the research grants that I have discussed, nakalagay po doon yung penalties. Pero bibihira lang po ang magkaroon ng penalties kasi they adjust. Pwede pong ma-adjust yung scope based on doon sa katulad po ngayon, nagka-pandemic. So, syempre, i-adjust nila yung scope nung kanilang studies kasi napondohan sila pero hindi naman sila makapag-lab. So, ina-adjust po nila. Pero ang nakita ko doon, kapag inabort nyo yung talagang project at hindi kayo nag-act on it, kung may naibigay sa inyong pera or may na-disburse kayo na pera, you will need to give back that money and you will have you will also pay for 12% interest. Yun po yung nakita kong isa.
Okay.
Pero naka-dissect lahat yun sa guidelines.
Okay. And if I may just add, there are certain funding institutions po na hindi naman siguro ganun kahigpit yung yung terms in terms of project continuity at baka po walang talagang nakakatakot na penalties. But one thing that I would like to warn you about is that if you abandon a project or if you fail to finish the scope of a project, what you will lose is it could not be the money, but it's your credibility. So the next time na mag-apply po kayo sa mga funding institutions na to, hindi na po nila kayo bibigyan.
Yes, important. Kaya may track record na criteria doon kung naka-abandon ka na ba ng project or nakatapos ka na ba ng project. So mahalaga po yun for track record of your institution, the mentor, and also the school.
Opo, so yun pong requirement that you have to give the CVs of the students involved and the teachers, tinitingnan yung reputation and track record. Hindi naman po yun dahil nagiging snob or medyo elitista po ang mga funding agencies na to. They're just trying to gauge kung ano po ba yung level of trust na mabibigay nila in terms of yung track record niya po. Kung nakaka-deliver po ba kayo ng inyong mga ipinangako. Yan naman po. And any form of a relationship, whether it be a collaboration, mahalaga po kasi yung you get to keep what you promise because they entrust you with funding and resources that they could have given to other equally deserving individuals.
Yeah, pero may dagdag ko lang siguro sa tanong mo. So, in special circumstances like, may COVID-19, everybody, lahat naka-lockdown, hindi pwedeng mag-work sa lab. So, siguro, right now, may mga agencies na nag-waive or nag-extend ng deadline. Is that correct, Marty? Parang may extension?
Yep.
Okay, hindi naman ganun ka.
And sundin niyo po yung isang habit of effective people na sinabi ni Marty. You have to be proactive. So you have to communicate effectively. Typically po itong mga funding agencies na to, they do have program managers who monitor the progress of these projects. So typically every quarter po nagpe-present kayo. So you have a contact person. So kapag po nakakaramdam na kayo na ay teka medyo may roadblock that could delay the execution of certain experiments, just make it a point po that you proactively communicate that.
Yes. Tapos flexible naman ang mga funding agency. So as long as hindi talaga sobrang na-diminish yung quality, yung kunwari may isa ka lang sampling na hindi nagawa, okay lang siguro sa kanila kung nakadalawang sampling ka na. So pwedeng may mga ganong flexibilities for as long as yung intact pa rin yung results mo with respect to your objectives, and kasi nga yun nga may element of time and element of resources. So flexible naman sila kasi sabi nga ni Kuya Jeff, there is a quarterly monitoring for those grants.
Okay. So, can we have a couple more questions? Okay, so I guess maybe Mr. JP or who you guys can pitch in on this question. So, let's see. Maraming nagtanong, ano? So, okay, so what could be a good start of timely and practical research proposals for grade 7 students?
Okay. So grade 7 is first year high school?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Marty, you have an answer to this because you delivered a webinar on this. I'm sorry to throw you in front.
Watch out for the webinar on March. We will discuss practical research right now in the time of pandemic. So that's the offering that we will have kasi nakita namin na maraming nagtatanong kung paano gagawin nilang research ngayon na naka-lockdown sila at hindi pwedeng lumabas yung mga bata. Pero pwede nang lumabas yata ngayon yung mga 15 to 18, pero yung mga grade 7 hindi pa. So watch out for that webinar.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And also check out Marty's webinar on community-based research. That was our first course in FilSciHub Research University.
Po yun sa FilSciHub Research University website under Science Investigatory Project. The first course offering namin is how to come up with ideas at the high school level and research topics that you can pursue within the community. Yun po. So ang masasuggest ko po sa mga first year high school, look for opportunities within your immediate environment. Tingin po kayo dyan, meron ba dyang halaman na hindi pinepeste ng insekto? Perhaps that could be, it has insected, I don't know the right term, Marty, but baka repellent po siya. So you just have to keep scanning your environment po. I'm not discouraging you guys to aim for genius level type of research. If you can, by all means do it, but you start within your community. That's I think the easiest way to transition into a research type of activity.
Yes, you should watch that.
First
promotion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have one more, I guess. These are all good questions. So no,
we have a very smart community, and let me just say, we have had about 1,200 people dialing in earlier, and then about 900 who's still on. Maraming salamat po.
Yes. Okay, so next question. So how would we know if our research is not too less or much for a bachelor's degree?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think Janice actually gave an answer in our group discussion, behind the curtain. Key is communication with your advisor. You have to clearly define the scope of your project. The role of your thesis advisor is that they should provide you with feedback and guidance. Is what are the things you're proposing doable within a year? They should be very well be able to provide you with that guidance. And even with that po, one very important advice that I think I forgot to say. When you are defining your scopes and limitation po, what you intend to do. Part of defining the scope is, you have a plan A, right? You have steps 1 to 5 or 1 to 7 whatsoever. You should also have a contingency. If the first step doesn't work, what will be your plan? Where do you go? If you don't have access to the instrument that you need, ano po yung mga sunod yung pupuntahan? So this is part of your discussion with your advisor. That you define the scope and you plan for contingency. If things go wrong, where should you go? Because your time is limited. Time is your most limited resource. For undergraduate thesis, you only have barely about a year to spend on it. So early on, define niyo yung scope nung study niyo with your advisor.
And also budget.
Yeah, budget. Oo, mag-apply na kayo doon sa Fishered kasi wag yung personal savings ng parents nyo. Kung meron namang ganun, galingan nyo na lang ipagsusulat ng proposal.
Yes. Sayang kasi yung personal kung magagamit niyo pa yun sa ACADS nyo.
Yeah.
Kaysa sa kung meron namang opportunities, like what I've said, be proactive. Grab those opportunities. Kasi minsan akala nyo lang, sobrang technical niya, pero kapag na-experience niyo yung presentation and nakapunta na kayo doon, parang forgiving naman sila. Hindi naman sila yung parang mga layon talaga.
Medyo yung lions din po. I mean, it's we're trying to make this fun. There's elements of surprise that's infused in it. But kami po, nagsimula po kami, mga baguhan lang din po kami. Hindi rin po namin alam yung mga ginagawa namin nung una. Realistically speaking, don't get over-impressed. Don't get too impressed with our backgrounds and our achievements because kami po ako po nanggaling po ako sa barangay high school. Wala po talagang special sa curriculum whatsoever. Curious lang po ako at sinubukan ko. I failed a lot of times. We all failed a lot of times. We went to grad school. Yun lang po. You just have to start somewhere. And one thing that I would encourage you to do is that if you can start early, the better. Kasi bata pa lang, sanay na kayo. Pagtanda nyo, mas madali na kayong mag-overcome ng failure or, like failed attempts at something. Yun po yung sinasabi namin lagi. Start early.
Yeah. And it's always worth a try for these funding agencies because the money is there.
Yep.
And sometimes parang na-forfeit lang yung budget because wala daw nag-a-apply.
Yep.
If I'm correct about it.
Yeah, we had that discussion. And then one more thing, baka po kasi word kayo, paano pag hindi ako nanalo? Pag hindi po kayo nanalo, may mapapala pa rin kayo dyan kasi na-train po kayo eh. Paano ba pagsulat ng proposal? Though, i-acknowledge natin, hindi po lahat ng estudyante natin ay magiging scientist. But those students who got exposed to problem-solving activities and the ability to engage an audience and propose a topic, magagamit nila yan sa trabaho. So there's far-ranging benefits that the students can actually get from these skills and they can leverage it, for as long as they live.
Right.
Ayan, so I think that's all I have selected. So anything any closing remarks, Dr. Jeff?
Gusto ko lang po sabihin, napansin nyo naman po siguro gigil na gigil po kami when it comes to when it comes to our advocacy. So yung gigil po namin sa paggawa ng materials to promote STEM education and to promote the culture of research po sa atin. Sana po balikan nyo po kami ng ganong gigil din para po mas hindi naman po kami mawawala ng gana. Kahit po isa o dalawa lang po yung nagpa-participate, gagawin pa rin po namin to. But maraming salamat po sa pagtuto kasi inabot na naman po tayo ng 3 oras at kalahati. But we're hoping that it's worth your while. And then JP, do you actually want to promote all these activities?
We have a lot of web events coming up. So we put it in this form para makita na po ng lahat na plain and simple. Kasi marami po, medyo fully packed po tayo. Next week, Next week we will have the special topic. Nasat Lab will come back for another special topic webinar about elemental analysis techniques using energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy. So uh, very very useful po ito sa mga college students or even master students na nagtithesis because EDXRF is a very I would say a workhorse already when it comes to characterization on the elemental content. And after that, March 6th, that's going to be next week. And the week after, we will have Professor Dindi Voiles, our moderator for today. She will give us a lecture about introduction to organic chemistry. And March 13, coming right after that, is an online tanghalian. So it's like a what do you call this? An online kumustahan or
Okay, let me talk about this.
go.
Okay, so this is online tanghalian with Pinay scientist Rosita Carmen Atienza. Ako po, I'm fairly happy with how my career turned out. Maganda po ang nangyayari po sa karera ko galing sa training ko sa Pilipinas. Pero meron po akong idol. Isa po to si Rosita Atienza sa idols namin kasi kung makikita niyo po yung trajectory niya as a Filipino scientist up until now that she's a highly decorated career professional. Tune in kasi i-share niya po yung kwento niyo at kapag po meron kayong mga students who are looking for career guidance, she will be sharing those experiences and tips kung paano ba magtagumpay sa school, sa pag-PhD, sa pagtatrabaho as a scientist and now working as a business professional. So, Rosita Carmen Atienza is a summa cum laude graduate. She did her PhD and master's degree in Ivy League universities and she's Filipino, most importantly. So, attend po kayo, no? Napakaganda po nung webinar na yan.
Yep. And we have a lineup of special topics for FilSciHub Research University. So unang-una na po dyan yung home-based research topics as mentioned earlier by Marty. So ito po yung mga experiments, home-based experiments that we can do sa mga high school students na pwede nating gamitin yung mga gamit natin sa bahay. Home-based research topics. And then we have a special topic about taxonomy and nomenclature by Dr. Connie Cañete Gibas from the US, and chemometrics also from the US. We have a guest speaker from the Louisiana State University, Alexandria, about chemometrics. So this is very useful for college students. Be it in applied physics or the natural sciences, chemometrics is a very very useful tool for analytical analysis, analytical methods. And after that, we also have cancer genome analysis by Professor Chad Creighton of Baylor College of Medicine, also from the US. That's going to be on April 24. So just keep an eye on these scheduled dates. And we will be posting them naman po one at a time every week para ma-rewind po tayo. And dun sa Facebook page natin, when we post it, it's coming along with the registration form to participate here in Zoom. And of course, we are always live streaming it, whether through Facebook or YouTube. So just keep an eye on that. Yan, maraming salamat po sa pagsama niyo po sa amin for today.
Ay, maraming salamat po.
Thank you po. Enjoy your
yung link
Anything
po.
else?
Yung link nandun na po sa Zoom chat box and on YouTube as well.
Yep.
All right, and then nandun po sa website namin yung Google form. So punta po kayo doon, makikita niyo po doon how to claim your e-certificate. So if you missed the link here, punta po doon sa website.
Yes, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel para po makakuha kayo ng certificate.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and about the certificates, please be patient because we are issuing the certificates by batch. So we have specifically mentioned there that we will take around 7 days or 1 week to issue all the certificates. So kung hindi pa dumating tomorrow or next day, kapit lang po tayo and matatanggap din po natin yan. Yes.
Ayun,
Opo,
maraming
mag-message lang po kayo sa amin 1 week after kapag hindi niyo pa po na-receive.
Kapag hindi nyo
After
na-receive. Yep.
after 1 week. Opo, para hindi...
Mhm.
Ayun, maraming salamat po uli sa pagtutok. Next week po, meron essentially every week po between now hanggang siguro mga
Yeah.
of May. Umanda po kayo, marami po kaming ibibigay sa inyong webinars. And if you notice, meron po tayong mga international scientists na iniimbita. Meron po tayo sa biology, chemometrics, meron po tayo sa genome analysis. Watch out for more. Marami po kami nakalimutan.
And time and again, sinasabi po namin lahat ng certificates po lahat ng webinars po namin, web events, come with the participation certificate. So automatic na po 'yun. So you don't need to ask about it.
Yep. Ayun po, maraming salamat po ulit. Ingat po kayong lahat.
And no registration fee. Yeah.
Ay, wala pong
Totally
bayad.
free.
Baka po maningil sa inyo Hindi po kami nagpapabayad.
Yes, exactly.
Opo, kahit po yung modules namin sa FilSciHub Ed, if you have students and teachers trying to access those modules, wala po kaming pinagbayad sa platform namin. Kahit anong advocacy work and output that we have, hindi po kami nagpapabayad.
Yep.
So,
okay.
Thank you po sa lahat. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. And until next time po. So, we're signing off. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.